Delighted to welcome also my final show of the year, our regular guest on a Wednesday, Conservative commentator Benedict Spence. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Always good to see you with your unicorn tie on today.
Yes.
Nothing says Christmas like unicorns, I say.
I think it says a lot about British politics when you're constantly looking for unicorns. We can't all be as festive as you, Julia, bedecked as we are with the holly
and my baubles.
Yes, the nutcracker adorned with this festivities. I suppose that would make me the Rat King. I don't know. I don't remember how that story goes. But yeah, last show of the year. How do you feel the year's gone? Upbeat? Has it been a good one?
I think there's been some good things, there's been some bad things, some wars.
Are you happy it's nearly done?
I have got to be honest with you, I always, by this time of the year, I'm just like, yeah, thank God this year is over. But God knows what 2025 is going to be.
Do you remember the Conservative government? Do you remember what that was like? I don't. It was just been memory.
It was really rubbish.
It was.
But wow, what happened after that?
Yeah.
I have to say, the thing that most stuns me this year is not the Trump victory.
Or my
we
moustache.
saw that coming, or your moustache coming and going.
No.
Always glad to see that gone. Or what's happened in Syria, or everything. The thing that's most stunned me is that Labour are even worse than I thought they would be. There is nothing that they do that they don't mess up. And mess is a word I'm using for Ofcom reasons. It is absolutely astounding. Now, even today, this announcement yesterday that by Liz Kendall, the Work and Pensions Secretary, who previously, of course, has completely said, absolutely backed the WASPI women, that she's saying that 3.8 million women affected by this change in the pension age, that they shouldn't receive any compensation, despite an ombudsman report that took 5 years saying that they should. They should be getting. Now, for those of you who don't know much about this, and I can understand why it's quite complicated, WASPI stands for Women Against Pension Inequality. They're a campaign. They claim that 3.8 million women born in the 1950s were not made aware of a change in the age to the pension. So there were two big changes. One was the state pension age for women, after a court case, quite rightly put the state pension age for women up from 60 to 65 to match men's state pension age. That should have been done, frankly, decades ago. But also, a particular bunch of women were particularly hard hit by the pension age being raised by 2 years at the same time for some of them as they hit that. So instead of retiring at 60, as many had expected to do, they actually were retiring at 67. And a lot of these women were in either low paid work or they were caring. They were on low incomes as carers. They were expecting their income would rise once they became pensioners. That money didn't come for another 7 years. They feel they're out of pocket. They weren't aware, they say, that this would happen. They were simply unaware while they were planning. Benedict Spence, look, a lot of people have backed these women. Pretty much, Keir Starmer, Angela Rayner, the Work and Pension Secretary herself, Liz Kendall, they've stood there with placards. They've said it's outrageous, these women have been treated so badly. Tories deliberately kicked this into the long grass. They were not going to give them this money either.
No.
The idea that £10 billion of our hard-working tax money should be given to a load of women who, by the way, mostly weren't impacted by this. They were working and had to carry on working, so they earned more money, so they're not out of pocket at all, actually. It seems to me very, very clear that the people who've been most wronged have been the many millions of men who for decades were forced to work 5 years longer than women who were allowed to retire earlier despite living longer. I always thought that was an outrage. I'm glad that was changed. But also the many millions of younger people right now who are going to have to work for many more years and pay more tax because the pension age wasn't raised soon enough and should have been raised more and should still be raised more, because I'm sorry, we can't have people retired for 30 sodding years.
Yes.
We can't.
There was always that case where there were going to be a few people who were going to be sort of very badly hit by this. And, the best part of a decade, or, 7 years or so, added on to your working life for money you might have otherwise expected. That can be a bit of a kick in the teeth. But as you point out, actually, it wasn't that large number of people who were left massively out of pocket. And actually, the fact of the matter is, nobody ever votes for the pension age increases. Nobody ever wants it. But
as Macron can testify.
Yes, but it has to happen. And again, it's one of those things where you say it over and over again. You get the country you deserve. You get the politics you deserve. If you're not sensible about these things, if you don't understand your commitment to the social contract as much as the government's or anybody else's, well, I'm sorry, but there are going to be nasty shocks down the line that come in this form for another. And as you pointed out, men, for all the decades of campaigning, women want equality. They're no different from men. They can do. And then the second it comes in, it's like, but this little addendum here and this little.
No, exactly. It was always unfair. Women always live longer.
We get this now with the campaign for people to be able to take their days off when they're on their period. And I remember
women,
learning about this.
Not people.
Oh, of
women.
course, yes, no.
Just to clarify.
But this is. Did I say people? God, that's deeply ingrained. What's happening? That's how they get
BBC,
you. That's how they get you.
Too much BBC.
I listened to Radio 4 this morning. It's all gone horribly wrong. But that was one of the core arguments, of course, for giving women equal working rights as men in the first place by saying, no, we're not physically lesser. We can do the same amount of work.
I find the same thing about the arguments about the HRT thing.
Yeah,
the menopause thing. I mean, just this whole... My mother's generation fought for decades, to not be seen as just bunches of hormones.
Yeah, when Liverpool lose at the weekend, I have to go into work the next day. It massively affects my mood.
Massively. Oh, God, it's a terrible...
It doesn't happen that much these days, but still.
All right, let it go. But this is the thing. I completely understand there are women who were really out of pocket and who seriously hoped that they were going to get their pension sooner, and they're out of pocket. And there are maybe in the tens of thousands, maybe in the very small hundreds of thousands, people who perhaps we could give some extra help to. I'm not averse to that. I don't have a problem with that. Liz Campbell yesterday said, no, there will be no money at all, no payouts at all for these 3.8 million women. But most of these women weren't affected. And as the Ombudsman even pointed out, look, the Department for Work and Pensions were hopeless in sending out letters to inform people. But these things were announced in the budget. They were put on the front page of newspapers. People say, well, I was planning for my pension years. Well, you weren't planning very well, were you? Because you didn't bother looking up some basic facts. And I'm not entirely sure we should compensate people for not paying attention.
Yeah,
I know there are women who are hurting from this right now, but I really do think, though, I don't think it's the job of taxpayers now and in the future, because we haven't got 10 billion quid to give these women in total.
No, if we did, we'd be
borrowing that, so we're paying higher interest rates. So inflation's just gone up, interest rates won't come down sooner, and so future taxpayers who are struggling to get on the housing ladder, struggling to pay bills, struggling to where they can have a kid and afford childcare, all of that, they're going to be paying extra taxes to pay for that. And I'm sorry, because someone didn't pay attention. Don't tell me you were planning for your future, but at no point thought to check what your pension age was.
Again, there's a real disconnect in this country between people who actually understand what a pension is. Which is, a lot of people listening to this will probably be very angry about what I'm going to say. You didn't pay into a pot your whole life. You paid your taxes. And if you didn't pay enough in tax, which actually... broadly speaking, this country didn't have enough growth, and actually, less was paid in than perhaps should have been to maintain the services that people seem to demand. Well, I'm sorry, that means that there will be less money later down the line because there'll be less growth, because that's what people can afford to pay now. It's a benefit. It's not a pot that you've paid into. That's how you have to look at it. And the inability of people to see that, thinking, it's my money, I'm sorry, buddy, it's not.
That's the sad thing. But look, I mean, the key thing here, I think, the really, really key thing here is Labour hypocrisy. In opposition, it's very easy. You just oppose everything. The Tory government, Tories are doing this, it's awful. Even though, of course, some of the pension changes came under Labour, some under the Tories. George Osborne put the pension age up by 2 years, etc., etc. But fundamentally, all governments just kicked this into the long grass. They didn't do a good job of it. It was also, frankly, again, our first-class, world-class civil servants absolutely messing up again. Also, the Ombudsman pointed out most women who got the letters telling them when their pension age was changing to didn't bother reading it or registering it at all anyway. So would letters have made any difference for a lot of these people? I think they probably wouldn't. But the key thing is, very easy in opposition. Compensate this, compensate that, money for this. Oh, these poor downtrodden people. We care about pensioners in poverty. We care about this and that. But when it actually comes to being in government, you have to make decisions, and decisions are tough, and you have to choose, will I spend the money on that, or will I spend the money on this? And they're saying no. But it's the hypocrisy, it's the lies. Basically, if you want to work out what any Labour policy is going to be, look at what they said in opposition, whether in manifesto or in 2022 or 2019, and it's going to be the opposite of that. You literally can't trust a single word that any Labour politician has said in the last, I would say, 9 years.
Unless it's on environmental or energy policies, in which case absolutely believe them, because they're going to do the insane things that they say.
Because they are that mad.
Yeah, that's the only thing that they will tell the truth, which is we're going to trash the sector. And people still went, all right, I'll vote for them, they're not the Tories. So.
Yeah, exactly. I know, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Do get in touch. But if you're one of the women affected, we're going to talk to Ros Altman about this former pensions minister. She supports the WASPI women, but has been attacked by them in the past for not doing enough when she was in government. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But I also particularly want to hear your thoughts about whether or not Elon Musk and his $100 million that could be on the cards to fund Reform UK. I'm not sure they could even spend that much money in a British campaign. I think that's American-style campaigning. Meeting with Nigel Farage and Nick Candy, the former Tory millionaire who's property tycoon, now giving money to the Reform UK party. They're discussing funding. Do you think, Benedict, that is a game changer?
If they can find a way of actually getting the money in, which I'm sure they will be able to. There's very intelligent
Elon Musk owns firms here.
Yeah. There are plenty of ways of doing it.
So you can't be a foreign donor or foreign company, but if you are registered in this country,
I think his grandmother was a Scouser, Elon Musk. Just as a complete aside, there's a weird thing if you ever sort of see him with the mute button on. Imagine him talking with a Scouse accent. That might brighten up your day. Will it be a game changer? Increasingly, I think Reform are getting a lot better at this operation. I did have my doubts about this, and I think if you put enough money into a system, if you put enough money into a party, you can actually be quite bad at politics and still end up getting quite good success. I think you only need to see how close they came in at that 100-odd seats at the last general election where they were coming second. That money could be put to great use there, and I think you shouldn't underestimate, regardless of what I might think about Reform and its policies and how it advertises itself right now, don't underestimate quite how ticked off people are with both the current government and still the Conservatives. I know the Conservatives have edged ahead in the polls, but I think that's more sort of force of habit than anything else.
I think one of the key things is also going to be, if you want to be, therefore, talked about themselves as a protest party, but a party that basically can damage the Conservatives and force changes of policy in the Conservatives. And Nigel Farage made it really clear. It doesn't matter. You get Labour government, they're the same as the Tories anyway. You may as well vote for them. Doesn't make any difference. But he says this time round, 2029, he wants to be a party of government. Now, at that point, you need to flesh out a lot more policies, because if you're going to be held to account for things, as Labour are discovering, they've been out of office for so long, they forgot that you might actually have to put some of this stuff into action. Yeah,
there's two other things I would say about this. The first is they need somebody other than just Nigel Farage. Farage is a fantastic figurehead, a lightning rod.
I mean, we have Richard Tice up next.
That's two, and then there's Rupert Lowe, that's three.
Rupert Lowe's fantastic campaigner.
Beyond that, I mean, Zia Youssef is good. He's very eloquent.
He's very good.
That's four. Beyond that, where is it going to be? Is it going to be a lot of ex-Tories?
Tell me how many good.
This is my point.
Look at Lee Anderson. No, how many good Labour? I tell you what, most people when Lee Anderson speaks go, completely agree with him. How many good Labour performers are there? There was a Labour minister out on telly this morning. I don't know her name. I don't know if she's going to be in the job long. I mean, she wasn't just eviscerated. The woman was cannibalised.
The important thing to recognise here is, though, that Reform as an insurgent party don't have that kind of established brand recognition. So that's why they need lots of good, eloquent people to get the message across. And if you just rely on a handful of people, I don't think that's enough, because you can't canvass an entire country if you're doing that.
That is true. Well, again, that's where the money comes in, doesn't it? It's attracting those people, which should become more viable. Just finally, before we go to a break, and we are going to talk to Richard Tice in just a couple of moments about the possibility of that Elon Musk funding. The restaurant critic Grace Dent is going to be a judge on the next series of Celebrity MasterChef alongside John Turode, after Greg Wallace, I love these euphemisms, stepped aside from the programme following these allegations from numerous women over numerous years of inappropriate behaviour. I like Grace Dent, a big fan. I mean, I don't watch the show because that makes no difference whatsoever to me, but that's the end of Greg Wallace, isn't it, really?
It is, but I don't
want him cancelled. I don't want him cancelled, but,
Grace Dent is a very amusing food critic, but also she's not averse to the odd little bit of innuendo herself, so I'm curious to see how that'll come.
Remember Mel and Sue on Bake Off? They were allowed to get away with it. Different rules. I think it depends whether or not you make people feel uncomfortable. I think that might be part of the thing. Anyway, well, sure, I can get your thoughts in on that if you want.